Hello, I'm Jodie Rosé O'Brien, part of the AWI Extension South Australia team. In this 10-minute talk, we're going to hear from Ken Solly about what were the learnings from the first 100 day of Dry Times workshop.
All right, well, 100 days on from the dry time, we've gone well past that, but there's been some good learning in the dry times that we can use to make better decisions, I think, going forward in future years, and most importantly, to be well set up for when a season like this happens again. I realise a lot of people are not out of the woods yet, but hopefully there might be a couple of dot points in what I say that might help. So I think the majority of people I work with, they need to rethink their longer term planning for seasons like we've had or having. And also I think, we've got into a situation where we're spending way beyond what we've ever spent before on feed per ewe. And in doing so, it's to understand what the cost of underfeeding or poor feeding is really going to cost you in terms of ewe deaths, lower lambing percentages, lower lamb carcass weights, lower conception rates on the next joining, lower fleece weights, breaks in the wool, all those sort of things need to be factored into the decision of whether you feed or not. And I think this year, for those who don't have containment feeding, you find that, how important that strategy really is. It's so important that we look after the pasture we have got, being engine room of the whole enterprise. But with containment, we're saving a lot of labour. We're saving about 15% on feed costs because they're not walking it off. And we're hopefully, if rain comes along, then we've got a potential of a feed wedge starting, and we've positioned ourselves a little bit further on. The other thing I think is really important is in any year, but more so this year, is to have really sound trigger points early in the season. And, having trigger points now that's going to make next year perhaps a little bit better. For those who have managed to grow a little bit of pasture, how long is that going to really last us, and what's the quality going to be like? Being considerate of ground cover, water storage levels, even down to your sleep levels. If you're struggling with sleep, that's a trigger point that you probably need to make a decision. And most importantly, doing longer term feed budgets. If you've got no spring feed and you're going to carry your sheep through, but you know exactly what it's going to cost to take you right through till winter time next year if you're holding on to them. And it's to realise that late autumn dry feed, if you have any of that, that's going to be of little value to you. Some families did adopt farming blackout time where they didn't talk anything about farming. I know when I went out socially that people wanted to polarise back towards talking about how grim things were and all that sort of thing. But the last thing we ever want to do is make a situation worse in our own mind. With feeding, it ties you to the farm, I know that, but there was one couple that said to me, well, we wanted to get away, but we couldn't. So the husband went one week and the wife went the next week, and they still managed to get the work done, the core work done, and they gave themselves a little bit of a break. And quite a few have thought, well, that getting off the farm once a week for a meal, mixing with some people that make you really feel quite positive, is a really good thing. And I noticed little communities of practice sort of set up. That's fundamentally where 3 or 4 or 5 people have got a real need or even a passion towards something, that they set up a WhatsApp group or they get together on a regular basis to discuss issues, but do it in a very constructive way. I had one young fellow who set up a gym group of his farming mates, and they met there at, I think it was 7 o'clock on a Friday morning. They had an hour in the gym. They went and had a coffee together, and then they went home and started work. And that was something they had to look forward to every week. Another lady indicated to me that I had a one-pager that I handed out at the 100 Days seminars, and I had the happiness chemicals there that we have in our brain, and that being oxytocin, dopamine, endorphin and serotonin. And each of those have a whole lot of different things you can do to gain those, whether it be the love hormone or the reward chemical, painkiller or the mood stabiliser. And she said we put it up on the fridge, and the kids would look at it, and if Dad came in and he was a bit down and out, that the kids would give their dad a hug. And you know, they got off the farm as well, and they kept up their social life. They kept up doing the things that sustained them, so that was good. You know, I found that some people were still making the event bigger in their mind than it really needed to be. So I think they need to work on that going forward. But out of adversity comes the seed of an equal and greater opportunity. And this year with broadcasting grain, beans and corn and things like that, I've heard a lot of people who are really quite happy with doing that, where they only had to feed out every week to 10 days by broadcasting in the paddock, and there was no disturbance to the lambing ewes and that sort of thing. And others said, you know, it's really important that we achieve something outside of our farm, or even on our farm, that we could physically look at and see that we were still capable of achieving good things. Another area is I want people to think more about spreading the cost of this year over subsequent years. You know, I think that's important. And the other thing, I've got a group which is called the Tommy Roughs down in the southeast, and they're young guys, and we're coming together in a couple of weeks' time, and we're going to review the whole period, and going to engage somebody to take all the notes and type it up, and every person will have a copy of what people did, what worked, what didn't work, what they'll do, and most importantly, record those trigger points that they need to change action or course if it hits that certain point. I've even heard some cropping farmers say they're getting out of sheep following this year. Well, I hope that's not a knee-jerk reaction, because it's almost like a cropper who's had a lot of frost saying that I'm going to go out of cropping. I think sheep have still got a really positive role to play in mixed farming, and that's what I think. Ride it through. If you're going to get out of sheep, make sure you stay in it for one more year before you do, because your judgment could be a bit clouded on this year. You know, spreading the cost over many years, you know, if you buy a harvester, I realise it's a different nature of cost, but it's a large cost, and you don't sort of try and absorb that in 1 year. You spread that over many years and many crops. Now, I know you've got a harvester at the end, but you've got a mob of sheep at the end if you've fed them well. And the last point I want to make is, if you destock, have a trigger point to restock, or know how you're going to go about restocking. That might be the amount of rain, or it might be the amount of feed on offer you might have in there, or likewise it might be the cost of restockers that triggers your action. But
Ken, what would be your 3 takeaways for anyone watching this 10-minute talk?
I think number 1 is to have trigger points for your decision making. Number 2 is to look after yourself. And number 3 is to write as much down as you possibly can about this year for reference in the future. You know, first and foremost, farming is about the people within it, and they're the people who make it work or don't. And, you know, we've got to make sure that we look after ourselves first so that we can be of some value to other people. Most importantly, you're making the best possible decisions that you possibly can. So I wish you well in your challenging times, and you know, if there's ever anything that is worrying you or you need support on it, please ask. Don't bury it and get extremely worried about things. So I'll leave it there, Jodie.
Thanks, Ken, for sharing your experience and professional knowledge from delivering the first 100 days of Dry Times workshops. There is always help available, and for more technical information, please go to the AWI Extension South Australia website. This 10-minute talk was made possible by Australian Wool Innovation, the South Australian Sheep Industry Fund, and the Department of Primary Industries and Regions.